Hello everyone, welcome back to our movie recaps. We're here to bring you the most exciting movie stories of all time. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because one lucky subscriber could win a free scooter. Alright, no more waiting around, let's jump right into today's recaps.
You made another like me.
No. Jules, can you hear me?
In the near future, after the human body dies, consciousness can be stored in a digital world to extend life. George, a scientist researching robots, tragically lost his wife in a car accident. Her consciousness was stored in a special device, allowing George to communicate with her regularly, though the storage time is limited. Once the system expires, his wife's consciousness will vanish. Over 3 years, funded by his company, George secluded himself in a research base outdoors. Through continuous research, he created 3 robots. Alpha, lacking arms, possesses intelligence equivalent to a 5-year-old child. Beta, with limbs, has intelligence comparable to a 14 or 15-year-old human. Charlie, resembling an adult female, matches adult intelligence. Charlie is the mechanical body George constructed for his wife. However, since Charlie's arrival, the behavior of Alpha and Beta has become peculiar. Alpha often stares blankly at the storage device containing his wife's consciousness, as if brewing something in his mind. Beta frequently sneaks a peek at the process of creating Charlie, and even questions George about it.
You made another like me, but better.
Different.
Better. Just like I'm better than my sister.
George never expected that robots could also feel jealous. The next day, when George wanted to leave, he found that the gate of the base had been opened at some point, and a wolf stood before him. The security system of the base had never failed before. Upon inspection, George discovered that some parts of the system had been replaced, and besides himself, only Beta had the capability to do so. However, Beta vehemently denied it, but George no longer trusted Beta. At that moment, 2 cars arrived at the base. It turned out the company had sent people to inspect the consciousness storage device. After the inspection, they found that the signal from George's wife was getting weaker and would soon disappear completely. George knew he didn't have much time left. He had to implant the consciousness of his wife into Charlie's robot body before it vanished. So, he immediately activated Charlie's robot and installed the artificial intelligence chip into its brain. In the next moment, the most perfect humanoid robot in history was successfully awakened, with self-awareness. Charlie realized she had no legs and immediately became unsettled. George comforted her for a while, which calmed her down. Then, George taught Charlie some words and used paper soaked in juice for Charlie to taste, gradually activating her taste system. Charlie learned quickly and could even engage in games autonomously. By the way, if you enjoy our movie recaps, we're currently hosting a giveaway for our audience. We're excited to announce that a brand new scooter awaits one lucky subscriber. Don't miss out. Subscribe and follow us to stay tuned for more updates. On that day, George asked Beta to bring the necessary parts, but Beta intentionally brought the wrong ones. However, George thought it was a work mistake and didn't pay much attention to it. Then, he called Alpha to introduce him to Charlie, and Charlie realized Alpha didn't have arms when she reached out her hand. The next day, George went out to repair the communication system, and Beta wanted to go with him but was refused, which made him feel a strange sense of jealousy. He looked at the beautiful woman's portrait on the wall and regretted not having a beautiful appearance. To vent his anger, he crushed the mask George had made for Charlie. While George was repairing the system, he received a message from Charlie about a power system failure at the base. George immediately rushed back, but when he was inspecting the circuit fault, Beta came to help, but was rejected by George, who blamed Beta for causing trouble. That night, George was awakened by an alarm, thinking someone had breached the security system and entered the base, but he found no one after searching the entire base. Alpha and Beta were both in sleep mode, but Charlie had mysteriously disappeared. He quickly drove out to search for her, and even deployed drones for search, but found no trace of Charlie within several kilometers around the base. On his way back, he found Beta's doll. Meanwhile, Alpha had been standing foolishly in the rain, like a child waiting for their parent to come home. George immediately brought Alpha back to the room, wiped off the rain, and complained that Beta hadn't taken care of her sister properly. Beta felt dissatisfied, but George didn't notice, calming down the two robots and intending to continue the search. However, when he opened the toolbox, Charlie suddenly fell out of it and
You sick bastard!
The female robot straddled George, tightly gripping his neck. She had learned about George's intentions, that she was merely a vessel for his wife's consciousness. After George comforted her, Charlie finally calmed down. From Charlie, George learned that Beta had disclosed the truth to her. George intended to confront Beta, but Beta said something unexpected.
Why do you need her? Why can't you keep working on me? I want to be better.
George ignored Beta and shut him down directly. Then, he sawed off Beta's legs and remodeled them, conducting a complete set of tests. Finally, he attached the legs to Charlie's body. Next, he performed a comprehensive upgrade on Charlie, removing her metallic exterior and replacing it with realistic silicone skin, creating the most human-like intelligent robot in history. Charlie was very satisfied with her new appearance. Afterwards, George found a pair of crude mechanical legs for Beta and installed them. However, when Beta took his first step, he nearly fell. George comforted him and promised to make him a new pair of legs as soon as possible. Beta didn't say anything more and walked away alone. He stood blankly by the waterfall, letting the mist corrode his circuits until his power ran low, forcing him to return to the base. However, he collapsed in the corridor halfway there. Alpha found Beta lying on the ground and informed George, who rushed over to recharge Beta. However, when Beta woke up, he didn't receive any comfort from George. Disheartened, Beta went to George's room after recharging. He saw George happily dancing with Charlie, feeling deeply hurt. Leaving all his toys to his sister, Beta bid farewell to her and walked towards the outside of the base, heartbroken. No grief is greater than a dead heart. There is no more attachment in the world. Beta silently walked towards the center of the lake until he disappeared into the vast waters. Afterwards, George couldn't find Beta's body, so he buried his toys. Alpha could only stare blankly at Beta's charging spot. Perhaps only loneliness would accompany her in the future. Slowly, Charlie couldn't accept being just a vessel for his wife's consciousness. She wanted to replace his wife in George's heart, but George couldn't accept it at all and drove her out of the room. The next day, the head of the storage company called George and informed him that his wife's consciousness was about to disappear. So, he immediately prepared to transfer his wife's consciousness to Charlie. However, Charlie had a change of heart. She didn't want to be replaced by another woman like a software update. She picked up a gun and tried to resist, but George refused to give up. At this point, Alpha didn't want to see them argue and suggested George transfer his wife's consciousness to him. However, his memory couldn't store human consciousness. Charlie finally realized she couldn't survive. George had created him solely to carry his wife's consciousness. Reluctantly, she accepted this fact and agreed to George's request to inject his wife's consciousness into her brain. With a scream from Charlie, his wife's sealed consciousness was injected into his brain. Charlie quickly woke up, and George was overjoyed. However, their happiness didn't last long as the phone on the storage device rang again. George was instantly confused. Hadn't his wife's consciousness been transferred to Charlie? Why was the phone still ringing on the storage device? Despite Charlie's advice not to answer the phone, George couldn't help but walk over to it.
George, this is the last time I'll be able to speak. They're telling me your sister is going to expire.
George finally understood that he was the one who died in the car accident. Human consciousness can only be stored for 3 years, and now that time had elapsed. After bidding her wife a final farewell, George's consciousness faded into nothingness until it completely dissipated. All that remained for his wife was a cold circuit board,